Good news, everyone! Talking Futurama is coming back for Talking Futurama Season 2, Part 2.
Fresher than a summer ham, this podcast comes every Friday. And if you sign up at the $5 level at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons, you can hear each episode as it goes live.
That's right. Sign up today at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons for $5 to hear Talking Futurama every Friday throughout the rest of 2020 and also all the previous episodes we've done so far.
So head over to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons now, or we're going to clamp you.
Shut up and take my money.
Cartoons from present in the past. Every week will be an animated bash. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! Maybe a short but mostly shows. We'll talk, we'll analyze, exploring as we go. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to What a Cartoon, where fudge is the honorable path. I'm one of your hosts, the mundane, misleading, and moth-laden Bob Mackey, and this is an animated exploration of every cartoon ever. Who is here with me today, as always?
Hey, it's Henry Gilbert, and on the third mic, we've got Plank.
And today's podcast is all about the Ed, and Eddy episodes, Brother, Can You Spare an Ed, and The Day the Ed Stood Still.
Makes you want to throw up, don't it? Let me take that for you so you don't contaminate those badly drawn fingers.
Those fingers are well drawn.
Yeah,
the show is very well drawn too. How dare you, Eddy?
Yeah, it's weird. I guess they're negging on themselves there, perhaps. But yeah, this was a pick of premium patron Isaac Fox, who didn't really say why exactly they wanted this, but in general they felt that, they wanted us to cover this very popular Cartoon Network series that me and you haven't really chatted much about up to this point, and it was a favorite of Isaac. Isaac wanted us to actually do a season 2 and a season 3 one, but season 3 is the only one regularly available on any digital service right now. So.
Yeah, it's wildly unavailable, despite how popular it was for 10 years in its run.
Yeah, and I've got some theories on that. But yeah, my history watching this one, I did watch it when it was new in 1999, like a new Cartoon Network show. I'm going to give it a watch. But I liked what I saw, but sometimes I'd be like, it pushes me away, or this is too gross or too grody. I have a weak stomach sometimes, Bob, with animation stuff. There's some stuff in one of these that made me go like,
I figured, yeah.
But I liked what I saw, and I liked the cheekiness of it. It stayed popular so long that by the time it ended, like I was 27, I think. And at that point, I was like, I am definitely too old to be caring about the finale of Ed, Edd and Eddy. I thought then.
I couldn't believe it went on for that long. But yeah, I think I watched a bit of it new in the late 90s. 99 wasn't when it premiered, correct?
Yes.
And I think just out of habit, because I would watch Adult Swim every night for like 4 or 5 years, probably more than that. Like my TV would always be on when I had cable. My TV would always be on Cartoon Network. So when I was living at home and going to college, I would have my TV on next to me and my computer, and just it'd be playing Cartoon Network all day. So I think I absorbed most of the show through osmosis. Just like this, and Courage the Cowardly Dog, and like Time Squad, like all the shows from this era just were next to me while I was like on the computer just peeking over from time to time. But I knew who Danny Antonucci was, and I knew what he did before this. So I had some love for this based on that and just how good the show looked, but I never truly got into it.
Even though it's clear to see once you look at all of his work that Ed, Edd and Eddy is so much of a piece with his other stuff. But in 1999, I didn't make that connection. Also because if I had a weak stomach for Ed, Edd and Eddy, you can guess that I didn't watch much of his other stuff before that.
I assume you didn't, but yeah. I have some affinity for it, even though some of it's just like, how did this become a series? And I do want to talk about that in your history. I'm sure we're going to zero in on that 20 minutes on the show that I won't mention the title of until we get to it.
But even if I didn't watch it too closely, I knew how big it was just because anytime I tuned into Cartoon Network, they would be appearing in, the interstitials, or they'd be right up front of all the characters dancing around, or all of them hanging out for a big cartoon party. Like the Ed boys would be right up front.
It's a quality show, but I just don't understand why it was so huge. Not to disparage the choice of our patron. I'm just like, it's a good show, but I guess I never could have judged, like, thought SpongeBob would have been the biggest thing in the world.
Right? Yeah, that it's not as marketable looking as SpongeBob. I mean, the characters are more hideous than like Ren and Stimpy, and
it feels like a true 90s cartoon as the new era of cartoons was coming in. Like, this is just the most garish and gross and mean cartoon with tons of screaming, which I like, but I don't know how kids 10 years younger than me connected with this.
The fact that it ran from 99 to 09, it is seriously the last gasp of like the 80s indie animation coming to TV and going mainstream. Like, this is the last of it. By the time it airs in 09, the finale movie, Cartoon Network and animation in America in general is in a completely different place.
Yeah, like, and then we have the era of Regular Show and Adventure Time, and they had already aired like things like Flapjack and Chowder. Things were changing definitely, and a different era of cartoons was starting.
But yes, let's talk about Nanny Antonucci, the creator of this series and a bigger part of 80s and 90s animation and the aughts than I think a lot of people might realize. He's a very singular person, I will say. I watched a few interviews with him that I'm like, man, you're saying this stuff on camera when you got a Cartoon Network show airing? Like, I got to think some executives don't like you.
He's I'm going to smoke during my interview kind of guy.
Very much
Real
so,
Dennis Leary energy to him.
No, I mean, he's a smoker. He's got like sleeves of tattoos. He walks around with a punk t-shirt and a hat covering his, receding hairline. He's so much a Gen Xer animation nerd. But he was born in 1957 in Toronto, Canada, the son of Italian immigrants, which
with a name like Antonucci.
Yeah. But we're used to, like, in our generation in millennials, we knew many more like second generation Italian immigrants, the children of immigrants. But he was the son of Italian immigrants, and that life history comes into his work a whole lot. His big breakout cartoon was influenced by that. And also Rolf in Ed, Edd n Eddy, who, look, definitely there's some dated jokes about like weird foreigner jokes, but it is inspired by he grew up as the son of a weird Italian family surrounded by like white bread Torontoans. So Rolf is a little bit of that.
Okay.
So let's not cancel Rolf entirely. But yes, Antonucci grew up like many Gen X animation nerds, a huge fan of Golden Age animation and watching every cartoon he could on TV. Tex Avery in particular was a hero for him. His first son's name is Tex, just to let you know how much he likes. And his second son's name, Marlowe, because he loves Philip Marlowe. And also a fan of the burgeoning punk scene in the 70s as well.
That's so weird because there's so much like 60s stuff in his animation, and so much like one of the shows we'll talk about soon has so much to do with the Rat Pack.
Yes, yeah, he is into the Rat Pack a bit too.
It's weird to be like a punk rock old Gen Xer, but also like way into like cocktail culture from the 60s.
He's kind of all over the place, yeah. But so Antonucci attended Sheridan College in Toronto, but did not complete his time there with a degree because he went straight into the animation field, specifically at the Toronto-based studio Can Image Productions, which was a sub-studio of Hanna-Barbera. Hanna-Barbera was doing, we're used to overseas stuff being done. It's like America ships it to Korea. That's usually how it goes. But Hanna-Barbera, like we talked about in the Scooby-Doo one, they'd send some stuff to Canada. They'd send some stuff to Mexico. Can Image's job was to do a lot of the animation, kind of like Carbuncle, actually, I think, a lot, like for Ren and Stimpy. They would do the full animation, but send it overseas for ink and paint. So that was what Can Image worked on. Antonucci cited that he worked on the 1980 Flintstones Comedy Hour. He worked on that one. You're going to say even worse yuck here. He worked on the original Scrappy-Doo cartoons.
Oh, that poor man. That poor man.
And also worked on the Smurfs, the first run of Smurfs for Hanna-Barbera, and even did the Tarna section of Heavy Metal.
Wow.
So he had one big thing.
I'm pretty sure that Fred and Barney show gave me depression as a child.
They'd bring me down whenever I'd see him. I'd be and it's a whole hour, you say?
Is that what your cell is from?
I actually think it is,
okay.
Yeah. So I
stare at it every time I'm here.
The Flintstones Comedy Era was then combined with the Thing cartoons as an hour, and so was the Fred and Barney Thing hour. And none of it really survives the animation of the interstitials, except for Cells Like Mine. That's basically like the "We'll be right back" of Fred and Barney dancing with ever-loving thing of Marvel Comics.
What if they fought or kissed?
I mean, I think they'd like him because of all his rock. They're like, oh, we do rock things all the time.
He needs a rock name.
Then again, Fred really likes breaking rocks at the quarry. That's his job. So.
Oh, the thing's done for.
But yeah, he was working on those Hanna-Barbera productions, but in the mid-'80s, Antonucci says he was planning, to do the big move you do as an animator, which means moving to Los Angeles to start working in that world. But he says that on his way to Los Angeles, he's heading over to the west coast of Canada, has a stopover in Vancouver, and he takes on what he thinks will be a part-time job, which turns into over a decade of work at International Rocket Ship Studios.
I know this because of Nickelodeon, what they would air in between cartoons, especially The Cat Came Back, that award-winning short.
Man.
They made it, and I watched it again today.
Every time I see that glowing rocket ship thing, I'm like, God, The Cat Came...
Did they air that like 6 times a day or something?
I felt like I watched it a million times and loved it every time. It's what my mom loved it. Like when that Cat Came Back came on, she would just sit down and be like, all right, not moving for 6 minutes. And I thank the Canadian government too for sponsoring that.
Yeah, they will pay for art.
What a concept. But he starts working at Vancouver at International Rocket Ship, which was founded by Marv Newland, who he was famous for the Bambi Meets Godzilla short, which was one of like the early hits of tape traded animation, which I didn't understand that context of it when as a kid we rented the Godzilla 1985 movie, and it's just at the start of the VHS tape. And Bambi Meets Godzilla is a like 2 layout joke of just Bambi and then Bambi's crushed by Godzilla's foot. That's what would happen.
Before I saw it, I was expecting much more, I think.
The promise of it, that's the joke. But yeah, so at International Rocket Ship, Antonucci quickly climbs up the ranks. He's proving himself to be one of their better animators and one of their like more forceful personalities too, with a good hand in comedy. He worked on a number of commercials and television idents for cable channels, including Nickelodeon. He also took part in a lot of subcontracted work. For instance, he's one of the millions of animators credited on the Chipmunks Adventure movie.
Damn. I was watching his reel is online on YouTube, is like reel with commercials and stuff on it. Man, that brought me back. Like I love that era of like independent animators doing commercials, like that era of like late 80s, early 90s pop art with really distinct styles.
I love it too. Yeah, there's something about it that feels so unique to its time. You don't get, I mean, maybe you get it now. I never watch a commercial on TV, but the idea of like a shoe company saying, hey, could you just make like a fun 30-second cartoon about our shoe? And
about
just
a shoe butcher.
Yeah, and just make it weird. Make a weird thing, and that'll make people like pause and put the Gen Xers will, put down their coffee for 1 second and go like, I got to buy this shoe.
These shoes are real groovy.
I don't even know anymore, man. But so Antonucci, he's working his way up an International Rocket Ship, but his big break will come when he is able to pitch to them to design, animate, and direct his own short film, and that is called Lupo the Butcher.
Mm-hmm. I'm mostly familiar with this character through the Converse ads and the MTV like little bumper, because MTV funded so many animators doing little bumpers back when MTV was cool, man.
Yeah. Where's those fucked up cartoons? I want to see him back again.
That's what Jay and Silent Bob were saying like 25 years ago.
God, so old. I'm so old. But yeah, the original Lupo the Butcher, it's technically 3 minutes. It's more like 2 minutes of real animation and then like a minute of him like swearing over the credits. But it's a very violent, very profane, very punk rock kind of short about, an Italian Canadian butcher man who's just like, hey, fuck you. What's that? Like he's just swearing the entire time. And you have to put yourself into 1987 brain of like, had you ever seen a short about a swearing fat guy who chops himself to pieces and there's blood everywhere as he's saying like, fuck you, hey, fuck you.
And his swearing head is left alive at the end.
He spits in his own eye. He's so rageful. Like you'd never seen anything like this. Like Antonucci said, like even at International Rocket Ship, they were kind of disturbed by it, and he had to do a lot of convincing to get the company to support it.
And even then, his like distinct character design style is present. Like it's there.
Yeah, you can see the line from Lupo to the Ed and Eddy guys. And yes, also it brings in his Italian heritage in there too. Like Lupo is in a classic Italian style of butcher.
Does he do the voice too?
I think so.
Okay.
I believe so. Yeah. It showed off so many of his best skills. Like, he's really great in just unique character design, shocking details, springy action, and it did feel like a throwback to like when cartoons were just weird shit. Like Windsor McKay even like kind of just, well, also there's no background to it. It's, you know, it's just a character on a white background chopping off things.
It makes the blood really stand out.
Oh yeah. And you know, the creepiest thing to me is the neck veins on his severed
yeah.
That's, I think because you just see it so long. So yeah, Lupo the Butcher, big time underground hit, getting passed around on VHSs all over the place by animation nerds in the late 80s, early 90s. It's playing at animation festivals, including it got a major platform boost in America thanks to Spike and Mike's Festival of Animation. That really gave Lupo a big boost. And Antonucci, it opened a million doors for him because he could get meetings now on his own as like, yeah, I'm the Lupo guy. That's me. I did the Iggy.
Yes, Spike and Mike was like the Sick and Twisted Animation Festival.
Yeah,
whatever it was called. Like they would like release like official tapes, and that was the way for like mainstreamish people to see these shorts finally. And I believe Mike's name is Mike Gribble, and that's why Dale is named Dale Gribble.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I looked it up. Lupo was on the first tape. It was on the first VHS of it, so that's how big a deal he was. Like, it's like him and two Mike Judges, including like the first or second Beavis and Butthead is on there.
When I was reading animation magazines in the early 90s, I was like, I wish I could watch this, but I don't have a checkbook.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And I couldn't ask my mom to order me the Sick and Twisted Animation VHS.
That put those so much at like a specialty and a premium.
Yeah.
Like, it was so big. If it was 3 minutes long, it didn't matter because you'd paid so much for it. Now it is so different. Like, I just type into YouTube Lupo the Butcher and I just watch it in like a minute. In 3 minutes, I'm like, all right, yeah, okay.
Even like 10 years ago or 15 years ago, Mike Judge was doing his own animation show called The Animation Show, and it was a movie theater event. You had to go to the movie theater. Before, it was like pre-YouTube, right before YouTube started.
Yeah, man, I'd like to go back to those someday. Yeah. And Lupo was getting passed around on tapes too. Future Cartoon Network executive Linda Saminsky talks about how like in 1988 he's working at Nickelodeon and coworkers are just going like, have you seen this fucked up thing? Here, I'll make a copy for you. And they just pass around Lupo. Like, that's how cool it was then. So thanks to that, Antonucci moved up even higher in the rocket ship machinery. He was working on more commercials and TV idents. Converse paid them to do Lupo as a shoe seller as well, plus MTV ident for it. And, you know, if you're a fan of the comic book Too Much Coffee Man, the Shannon Wheeler indie comic, there were a couple of popular Converse ads starring Too Much Coffee Man that Antonucci directed as well.
That is so like 90s cool. Even though Too Much Coffee Man is like the joke is one drawing and you can't really go from there. It's just like, yeah, I get it.
If you read Shannon Wheeler's later comics he did in Too Much Coffee Man, he's like reflecting on his success. He's like, the comics become kind of autobiographical. He's just like, I guess Too Much Coffee Man's pretty big. I don't even know what to write about him. Or he's just like, oh, now I make enough money to finally go to the doctor and the dentist and I find out my teeth are fucked up, so I'm actually spending more money now.
So you truly did have too much coffee. All that gritting and clenching. I am too much coffee, man. I'm drinking it now.
You need to get a coffee hat, though. But yeah, I do think those Converse ads, they made Converse cool enough that they did convince me to get Converses. Like, I probably bought them because I saw Lupo and Too Much Coffee Man holding those shoes. But Lupo wasn't the only MTV ident that Antonucci directed. He also did one about pooping.
Hooray!
It was called MTV Grunt, I believe was the code name internally. And it's just a group of gray-skinned, red-veined, bug-eyed, shirtless weirdos all focusing on for something. And they're like, they're all grunting. And then you hear a plop. And then the MTV logo plops into green water. So you're watching people shit. That is the.
They're shitting
joke.
Out a logo though.
Yes, yeah.
So yeah, and I saw that as a kid. I'm like, I want to know about these characters. I want adventures with them. I want to see what the lore is behind them, and they would do that.
Yeah, Abby Turhunkel agrees with you, Bob. That should be a show. Yeah, so it's 1994. Beavis and Butthead, biggest thing in the world. Why not find find another goofy animator who can do his own weird show. Definitely more expensive than Beavis and Butthead.
Yeah, and also Ren and Stimpy, when they were developing this show, was very big, and MTV wanted it. They're like, just give us Ren and Stimpy. You're having problems with content, we'll just air it. Nickelodeon's like, no, this is our show. We're proud of it. We don't want to give it to MTV. So they're like, what? We want our own Ren and Stimpy, and, something to be like a partner with Beavis and Butthead, I think.
Yeah, yep. And so they'd see the response to this ad. One of the multiple execs really liked the ad and just loved the look of it. So they hire Antonucci, and they're like, can you make this a show? And Antonucci, though, wouldn't do it at Rocket Ship. He would quit International Rocket Ship and open up his own offices in Vancouver for AKA Studios, a brand new studio that he would build all around making this show that would be called The Brothers Grunt.
And I tried to like this show. I feel like it is such
made for you.
It's such a bizarre oddity, but not an MTV oddity. That'd be later. It's such a bizarre oddity that I feel it can only happen at that point in time. And I like that it exists, but it is very difficult to watch because, I like these ugly 90s characters. I like how garish it is. The animation is very well done, but the characters can't talk. They can't talk. So it's all of them just encountering like regular people. Like there's only so much you can do with that. And also MTV decided to be like Beavis and Butthead, where it's just like, well, yeah, there's going to be videos, of course, but they can't comment on the videos. So it'll just be like cutting away to a character doing a weird thing while the video is playing and then cutting back. Like Syphil and Ollie was that for a while, the puppet show, but then they were like, let's just show all the puppets. We don't need videos.
And they wrote their own songs on Syphil and Ollie. You
oh man,
hear those.
I love those so much.
Maybe that should be our next live action cartoon. But yeah, you're right. The music video segments, it would be like if the Beavis and Butthead ones were just the dancing scenes from Beavis and Butthead. It was just like, well, what if we drew one of the Brothers Grunt like humping the air over a Red Hot Chili Peppers music video or whatever? It's also just like repulsive. It's an ugly show. Rough Draft Korea did work on it. It's one of the earlier shows. It looks good.
It's gorgeous for what they're trying to do. Like all of these very unique drawings, moving very well. But then I was reading more about it because it didn't do well. Like people didn't like it.
No.
People hated it. And then like they produced 45 episodes, and as of last year, like 9 of them appeared online that never aired on YouTube. Just like, damn, like you had such big plans for this show. You really believed in this show that nobody remembers or likes. I put it on Twitter, and I think I confused some people. Like I just put an image from the show on Twitter. People were like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What is this? It was like tickling their memory from like 1994.
Because it aired for like 3 months or something on MTV, barely. And MTV used to play everything into the ground. So yeah, it was 45 7-minute episodes. Basically, they wanted it to be like a 3 shorts per show plus music videos thing. And Antonucci, in an interview I saw, he's like, yeah, it was MTV's dirty secret. It failed. He's like, I'm satisfied artistically with what we did, but MTV didn't like it, and they kind of just shoved it in a vault.
And I was finding out that there was like merch for this show. Like there's a Fleer series of trading cards. Like people thought this would be Beavis and Butthead. And I do want to correct Wikipedia. It says the show's theme song was sung by Frank Sinatra. No, that's Toby Huss.
Yeah, come on.
Doing his Sinatra bits.
Yeah, that he'd already been doing on MTV, like his Sinatra thing. I saw him do Sinatra live at the Viva Variety 10th anniversary show in like 2008 or 9.
And all of these hideous characters are named after Rat Pack members, which I didn't understand as a kid at all.
No, me neither. Even though I wonder how after the fact that was. They're just because the opening of the show even is just like, it feels late in the game where like, can somebody explain the fucking plot of this show to me?
The first episode is like all lore too. Yeah. I was watching it this morning. I'm like, this is just so weird. Not sorry to pause on this for so long, but it's such a weird show. And MTV was so important to animation because Liquid Television was the early 90s. It was a showcase for all these weird shorts that would be at festivals. Then there was Beavis and Butthead, Brothers Grunt. There was MTV's Oddities with the Head and the Max. Like for a long time in the 90s, MTV was important for animation.
Yeah. And these studios like AKA Studios wouldn't have existed without the seed money from MTV to get them started. Like, and I think, definitely they bit off more than they can chew, but I think, you see Beavis and Butthead, it looks hideous. You'd never think it would succeed either. So how can you judge that the Brothers Grunt won't succeed? And you don't want to be caught with too little content like they were with Beavis and Butthead. So they over order on the first one.
I really wish wish MTV would have made the Peter Bag Hate series, the comic book Hate.
Yeah.
There's a pilot online. I think the voices are kind of weird, but it perfectly captures the comic characters so well. Check it out on YouTube, the Peter Bag Hate pilot.
But Brothers Grunt it also shows the dangers of like Antonucci hadn't really grown as a storyteller yet. Like he was so used to all these short format things. Like Lupo was actually very long compared to like commercials where he was telling a story.
Yeah, I think he needs boundaries, just like Ren and Stimpy needed boundaries to be better, to be more creative. This is just like, be as gross as you want. Who cares about the stories and what the characters are doing? Just be weird. And this was like very aimless.
It's just aimless, weird reaction shots that make you uncomfortable. And like Antonucci likes eliciting one of his favorite things in animation. He said about it in one interview I saw. He's like, I want to elicit emotions. Like he wants to show you something that makes you react in some strong way, which absolutely the Brothers Grunt does for a lot of people. But that strong emotion was changing the channel. So yeah, MTV
canceling your cable subscription.
MTV took it off the air. Didn't run several first run episodes. That's how poorly it did. And yet AKA Studios stuck around tenaciously. They did many commercials and idents more, not just for MTV, but also for Cartoon Network. If you recall in like 95, 96, if you say watched the Christmas block of Cartoon Network programming, there was this like jester dude who like was in a Santa outfit riding the sleigh in the air with a pig that he's whipping.
That's in that reel on YouTube. Yeah, I saw it there.
That was his attempt at making like a mascot for Cartoon Network. It was the jester, which he didn't stick around long. But so that was Antonucci. He did Levi's commercials. And there's one commercial you saw too on that that's very interesting for the Power Shoe called Kung Shoe, which get this, has a blonde boy in a backwards cap who's the cool kid. And then a trio of weird looking boys come up to him. And one of them, voiced by Vancouver actor Tony Sampson, he says, "Hey, give me those shoes." And he's a scheming little boy. They are totally Ed and Eddy prototypes.
I like how even the voice was the same.
Yeah, that kid's a great. Tony Sampson is the perfect voice actor for Eddy. Not to get ahead, but he worked with him on that commercial. So I think that commercial definitely was them testing the waters for the idea of these characters. And in 1997, Antonucci would also co-run a one-season MTV animation showcase called Cartoon Sushi.
I love that it was the return of Liquid Television, and I wish it lasted longer. But it was just Liquid Television, but for like 7 years later.
Yeah, you just call it a different thing, but it is just a bunch of little pilots that, hopefully maybe the next Eon Flux or the Max is in there. And he kind of shepherded it and had some of his own stuff appear in there.
I know, that's where I first saw Don Hertzfeldt's work, was on Cartoon Sushi. Yeah.
Wow. I see. I missed Cartoon Sushi a lot of times. I was more diligent in my Liquid Television viewing, though I think there was like a anime dub parodies that were in Cartoon Sushi that I think I remember.
Yep,
yeah,
that was part of it.
And, but yeah, so as he's working on that, he is also being asked to develop a kid show, his first kid show, which when you see him as the guy who made Lupo and the Brothers Grunt, makes no sense that he would do a kid show. And I think he resisted it for a long time. But while working on that shoe commercial, he says that he just had this drawing of these like 3 weird looking boys. And he's like, this could work for a kids thing. And, the AKA Studios, they decided to start working on developing it. As Antonucci tells it, first he was approached by a couple of development guys at Nickelodeon. Nickelodeon really wanted to work with him, which makes sense because Viacom had been his main employer at AKA, but for MTV. But ultimately, Antonucci says he was feeling way too constrained by the creative control Nickelodeon wanted to put on his show. And I mean, this would have been a later Nicktoon, and I think definitely the control was more put on Nicktoons. After Ren and Stimpy and Rocco, I think they're a little more white bread.
Before SpongeBob comes along.
Yeah, to finally let grossness return to Nickelodeon cartoons. It was, if you're not Klasky Chupo, they don't want you at that point.
That's true. That was towards the end of their reign.
They have, I think by 97, they had their 3rd show on there. I bet Rocket Power had premiered by that point.
Thornberrys was going on, I'm guessing.
Yes, yeah. So he's working with Nick, but he's not super into it. And then Linda Semensky, who had been a fan of Lupo stuff, she tells the story in 1999 that In 1996, she's working in Atlanta as a development executive at Cartoon Network. They get a drawing sent over the fax of the Ed Boys, just a drawing of them. And she and Mike Lazo are both like, well, that looks pretty cool. I want more of this.
I like these characters.
They look funny. So that begins the process of workshopping the show from 1996 onward. And when I look at Semensky's portfolio in 1996, this is an interesting time for her because she had been a development executive or an executive in charge of production on Rocco and some of the late Ren and Stimpy's, but she got a big promotion when she moves over to Cartoon Network. But when she's moved to Cartoon Network, Dexter, Johnny Bravo, Cow and Chicken, they've already been greenlit. She didn't greenlight these shows. Powerpuff Girls is coming, but that also is like a previous generation. She wants a show that can be her show, and Ed, and Eddy is that show. Like, it was her pick. I think it is the first Cartoon Network original that she fully shepherded from development to going on air. So it's a very special show to her as well. And also, it broke a lot of rules, this show that they were developing, that had been set for all those previous ones. One, it did not start with a pilot on What a Cartoon. It went straight to series. Originally, they had considered doing a pilot, as Antonucci tells it, but Semensky was just so into the idea. She's like, I don't need to see a pilot. You just go with it. Second, since it's not produced by the What a Cartoon pilot program, Fred Seibert is not involved in this. This is one of the very few he's not credited on of the old Cartoon Network stuff. Third, it's the first series done in the 11-minute format. Instead of 3 7-minute shorts, it's 2 11-minute shorts.
Okay,
so,
yeah.
For Cartoon Network, anyway.
Do you think that she kept it out of the normal system because she didn't think it would make it through?
I think that to a degree, but I think that is also because the last thing that makes it different, they didn't move him down to Burbank in the Hanna-Barbera structure. They kept it at Vancouver. So they had never done a satellite studio before for an original Cartoon Network production. This was the first one. Courage would come right after, and it would be the next one. So it got kind of normalized by Ed and Eddy, but this was the first one not made in the Hanna-Barbera infrastructure too. So that, I think, is also why they're like, sure, 11 minutes and you're not working with Fred Seibert. We can trust you. You've run a show before.
I feel like you can get away with more if you're working remotely. Like Mystery Science Theater got away with everything because they were in Minnesota, not in like New York.
I absolutely think that them being all the way up in Canada, tucked away down there, I think that did protect them a lot from censor notes that could have been like checked in on all the time. You know, they couldn't be visited every afternoon like the Hanna-Barbera offices could.
Like, oh, I didn't get that fax. You know what? It went to color animation. I'm sorry.
It just came back. I mean, you know,
the masturbation joke is being animated right now.
But yes, this show, as Antonucci set it up, would be a backyard summer adventures of a group of kids, 3 boys, not unlike the Three Stooges, having misadventures around other more popular kids. And Antonucci says that like he based all the characters like on his childhood or the lives of his kids too. He says like in one interview he joked of like, my kids could sue me for all the stuff I took from their lives. Yeah, in 1998 the production order of 13 episodes is well underway. Biggest production AKA Studios had done to that point. And Antonucci also is a real traditionalist. Like, he stuck with paper and cell way longer than anybody else did. Like, many people switched over to digital before he was kind of forced to by the 5th season of the show.
Yeah, the animation on the show is great. And I will say it was very brave of them to stick with like the lines on the characters being uneven and squiggly.
Vision, yeah.
But there is an art to that. And if you go back to like the pilot of Doug, that's the inception of Doug. Like the Jim Jenkins stuff was like the squiggly line. You always see the line squiggling, but then they're like, we can't keep that consistent. It's hard to do. Let's just have, flat line characters, like even consistency on the lines. This, it seems like a lot of work to make it look good.
Yeah, to have it not hurt your eyes or just distract you from everything. Instead, it works as just like it's kind of like a low feedback hum or just like room tone of it to add to the chaos of the whole world they built in it. It's a bold choice, but I really like it. Also, another bold choice, he says they have like UPA style impressionistic backgrounds. Like as Antonucci put it, he's like, in my childhood memories, I remember the other kids so well. I don't remember the buildings around me. So those should just look kind of fuzzy. And also like all the cast of characters in the show, they develop like weird looking kids in Antonucci style that still isn't like, as repulsive as the Brothers Grunt, but unique in their own way. Though I do think the collective of Eds, they share a little bit with the Brothers Grunt in like their DNA as well.
They're much more grotesque than the other characters, and they all have like interesting skin colors.
Yeah.
Except maybe Double D. Like Ed is like jaundiced, and Eddy is just like sunburned, just like pure, like a purely pink character with like a green tongue.
And also, like Brothers Grunt, they're the group of outsiders in a world that they don't fully fit into. The world reacts to them, to the things they do in it. And yeah, the show had more people than Antonucci work on it, though. He has like every credit on there. He's credited director on just about every episode, credited co-writer on, I think, every episode. He has his hands all over it. He was very involved. But other people who worked on it included the original story editor / head writer of the show, Jono Howard. They got their start on the Brothers Grunt, so he stuck around.
Keeping it in the family.
I will say, I think I noticed that most people who worked at AKA Studios, they didn't go on to like bigger things. It doesn't seem like it was like a launching pad for other careers. Most of them, like Jono Howard, he worked on honestly smaller productions than that, Ed and Eddy, out of the Vancouver animation scene. Though maybe it's like a lot of these folks just didn't move to Los Angeles, and you either stay in Vancouver or you keep working on it.
Once I make it back to Vancouver, I ain't leaving.
Maybe
Bob, I'll be there now.
I'll be begging you to move to Los Angeles with me and really hit the big time. No. But yeah, from what I read of the development practice, basically the boarders would meet with Jono, who would workshop all these ideas. Antonucci would be there for the brainstorming sessions, but it sounded more like that the story editor was the one who worked with the boarders to really flesh out a story and set it up. And obviously, for Antonucci being such a traditionalist, a board-driven show, and he was like, you got to draw this on paper.
Yeah, I was watching it this morning and looking at clips and stuff. I'm like, there are so many unique like poses and expressions. There's not like a stock pose for all these characters or like a stock face. It feels like it's down to like every storyboard drawing and every layout drawing.
No, and the fluidity of the characters is right down to their squiggly lines, like they do feel so alive. But I mean, Antonucci, I watched an interview with him like last year where he was still very insistent, like, you got to learn on paper. You need the feel of paper. You can't just draw on a digital thing. So that's the type of dude he is. But yes, the plot's focused on, the scheming Eddy, the neurotic nerd Double D, and the simple Ed in their quest for jawbreakers, money, and popularity.
We talked a bit about this before the recording, but like I think there's a discussion to be had about the Ed character, and I don't think we can make a character like him anymore, can we?
No, we grew up with just the stupid character.
Yeah.
Like stupid characters who are dumb, and they like Patrick Star is, I think, one of the last surviving ones of those types of characters.
I think it's more acceptable if it is like an animal, but when it's a person, I think the Ed character is funny, but it's also observational of people with certain conditions.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this seems a lot uglier than I remember it being, even though it's made to be affectionate and he's like a pure-hearted character or whatever.
And when they give him a vacant stare and a monobrow and he just is like, ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're making fun of a certain type of people.
I can't believe we just said duh all the time in the 90s.
It was normal then. I'm sorry. But that's why these characters don't, I have a feeling that this is partially why the Ed Boys don't come back.
Yeah.
You just don't see Cartoon Network characters. I think the test I give myself watching this of like, would I see this in Craig of the Creek? And I just tell myself like, no,
absolutely
that probably
not.
wouldn't be there. No, like for multiple things, not just Ed. But
that's actually like Craig of the Creek is a great show, and I like this show as well. But man, what different eras that is.
I know
Sorry.
None of this could survive in Craig of the Creek. And it's a fully Vancouver production, right down to the voice actors. A lot of folks that you might know from the ocean dubs of anime are also Reboot. Lots of folks we talked about in Reboot. I won't talk about all of them, but I'll highlight a few. We got Tony Sampson as Eddy, who just is Eddy. Like, I watched an interview with him he did for the video game they put out in 05, and even he's like, look at me, I'm Eddy. I'm just, they based him on me. And
he's a very pink man, I guess.
He's a little guy with like spiked up hair in the front and he's, you know, in his mid 20s and he can just do that kid voice too. Like Antonucci in the same video is like, well, he didn't design him to be Tony, but Tony and him just kind of melded at some point. But I think especially the fact that Tony voiced the Proto Ed in that shoe commercial, that makes me think more than a little bit.
I think he had formed the character.
And then we got actor Sam Vincent as Double D, Matt Hill as Ed, and both of them, they just have like, oh, you do occasional voice acting, or you're like a one-off appearer in shows that film in Vancouver. Like that's...
They were all in the X-Files. No, I think the X-Files went to LA by the time Ed and Eddy were starting.
Unfortunately, yeah, I think you're right by that time. But one of the older folks in this did have a part on X-Files once. But then there's also the original ocean dub voice of Goku himself, Peter Kalamis, is the voice of Rolf. So
I knew it. When I was watching this when it was new, I'm like, that's Goku.
I never knew. I didn't realize how similar, because he, you know, I'm not going to imitate that voice,
right.
But the voice he does for Rolf is so different from Goku, even though both of them are immigrants with strange ways.
It's true. Know? Instead of Senzu beans, he eats cabbage, right?
Yeah. And he takes care of chickens. Goku would just eat the chickens.
He'd eat the chickens. Yeah. He takes care of Gohan.
Does he though?
No, he doesn't.
Piccolo, yeah. But you've got him in the cast. We talked about Kathleen Barr as the voice of Dot Matrix in Reboot. She's the voice of Kevin. Dorks. That's her. I also want to point out Erin Fitzgerald, who does both Naz and May Kanker of the Kanker sisters. Erin Fitzgerald would go on to be a voice in countless video games. I think she's in like 2 of the Danganronpas.
Oh, okay.
But for most people, they probably know her as the second and more persistent Chie in the Persona 4 games.
That's a shame because I like the first Chie so much.
She's really good.
But she did a good job.
Yeah.
You can't. It's hard to fill those shoes.
I feel bad for her that in the Chie got so flanderized in all the post Persona 4 stuff where she just like, I like meat. Oh boy, is there meat here? Meat. It's like
she became Meat Girl.
She's more than just meat, and she was my waifu, and I am defensive about it.
Oh, me too.
But yeah, Erin Fitzgerald, she's Naz and May Kanker. The Kankers also, they're another one that I'm like, boy, I don't know if you can do these jokes now either, of like, they are the boy crazy girls who molest the Ed boys quite often. And like, they strip them naked and take pictures of them. And there's weird stuff with them.
It does seem to be like a little boy's perspective of girls. And it's very observational in that way, but it's not a show that's flattering to women.
No, I mean...
Or little boys, but I mean, come on.
Now they're all gross.
Yeah, but like how terrifying Sarah is.
Oh, yeah.
Feels like a little boy perspective.
Yeah, though she's the little sister, but it's definitely a joke about like sisters suck, right?
I agree. I had a sister. Still do.
And the Kankers are like the girls who are, you know, at first you think like, oh, a girl has interest in me, but then like, no, these are the bullying girls. And I think Antonucci also is like working out some of his feelings toward the girl bullies of his childhood.
I think so.
But also another key part of the voice cast is voice director Terry Klassen, who is like, I think the big voice director in Vancouver. He is director on 1 million dubs and 1 million other non-anime dub productions in Vancouver. A voice actor in his own right. He was, if you remember when we did Cyber 6, he was the voice of the villain in that, Von Richter.
Oh, cool. Okay, yeah.
And he's the ocean dub Krillin. So that's who Terry Klassen is.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it all.
And he plays a pivotal role in the movie finale of Ed, and Eddy as well. Terry Klassen is there. That's the only Ed voice he did in the series.
Really?
As part of a tribute to him. They all really like him as the voice director. Like the behind the scenes video I watched was all the actors going like, oh, I love working with Terry. He's the greatest. So they're working out of Vancouver at AKA Studios. Overseas animation was handled by Yeson Entertainment out of Seoul. We haven't covered them much, though they're very productive. Like they did Rocko's Modern Life, Static Cling. They did seasons 2 through 6 of Family Guy. They did seasons 3 through 8 of King of the Hill.
Wow, yeah. I was really impressed when I was watching this. I'm like, did this go overseas? I mean, not that would make it worse, but there's just so much control over every drawing and nothing is like awkward. I'm like, was this just animated in Canada? But no, I watched the credits. I'm like, what's Yeson or Yeson? Or
I don't know either. I didn't realize that they were so productive and on such good shows too. Like the animation, my original thought was like, if this is sent to Korea, this must be Rough Draft, right?
Yeah, me too.
But especially because I knew Rough Draft worked on at least some of Brothers Grunt. So to find out it wasn't them, but a less famous Korean studio, I was like, wow, that's really good results for sending it overseas.
They must have had like a really good overseas director.
I think so. I should look into them more.
Because Antonucci seems like so controlling and precise that every drawing needs to be correct. Every wiggly line needs to wiggle in the right way.
I wonder how many retakes he called back for there. Yeah. And the music for the whole show, including the theme song, was written by Patrick Caird, who mainly he just works on like just a lot of Vancouver, British Columbia productions, both animation and live action. He's just a local talent.
That is like the 160s touch to this, is like the very jazzy, like snare drum driven soundtrack. Yeah. That and Eddy's bowling shirt.
Oh yeah.
I think are the two like ties to the 60s stuff that Antonucci loves.
I guess he also has kind of like a watch fob like string too. It's definitely, he's not supposed to look like he's wearing Jinko jeans and a wallet chain. He's supposed to look like a 60s cool dude.
For whatever reason, like all the other kids seem like children, but these just seem like three small adults in the show.
Eddy especially. Yeah.
Like they don't have adults in the show, right?
Never.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah, it's Peanuts rules with the adults. And also Antonucci whistled the theme song, he said too.
Louis enjoyed that theme song, my bird.
Oh,
he was
man.
trying to whistle along to it.
You're going to watch, if you watch more of it, you'll never stop hearing it from your bird. Also, the title sequence was animated by an animator named Paul Boyd, a skilled animator who sadly suffered a tragic end to police brutality in Vancouver in 2007. It's a depressing story. I don't want to bring people down, but you can look it up. I mean, Vancouver police, it's not just an American problem of violent cops. Anyway, Ed and Eddy debuts as a show January 1999. Apparently, they actually did want it to be a 98 show. I found one of the first commercials for Ed and Eddy is from 1998, where they even joke about like, and this amazing show is coming next year. It's not ready yet, guys. Like, so I think there was probably some internal anger of like, hey, this is a 98 production. You guys missed your deadline. But all 13 premiered in January, and it was a huge hit, a huge rating success, not just in new run stuff either, but in reruns as well. A giant hit, especially in the very coveted young boy demographic. Like it was a big hit, and it got the standard 4 seasons, 52 episodes order that Cartoon Network did with most of their shows. But a funny thing happened by the time we reached 2004. Cartoon Network decided we're going to renew this for another season. I think that was another thing Szymanski did. She kind of broke from that tradition of like, once you've got 52 episodes, you've got the reruns. Like, who cares? Don't waste money on new stuff of that. Just make a new show. But before Ed and Eddy got renewed again, Dexter's Laboratory got that new season. Johnny Bravo got a new season of episodes. So it was more normal for Cartoon Network to do more than 4 seasons of something. And so, though by the time they renewed Ed and Eddy, they finally had to leave behind ink and paint, and they went digital, much to their chagrin.
Could be a misremembrance on my part, but I do remember watching, because it was assumed to be the last thing that would ever be made in 2004, I did watch the Halloween special.
Yes.
And at that point, I thought it was the last one ever until the renewal.
I think they even promoted it as such. Like there's the 52nd episode of the original run kind of works as a finale where it's like Eddy sees his future and he doesn't like it. And it's a half-hour special too. So it was meant to be, they thought that's the end. Then when they got an order for 4 half-hour specials, Christmas, Valentine's, and Halloween. Then I found the 2004 article that announced that actually they're going to do 13 more half hours. That got ordered in addition to the holiday special. Okay. So that's how much in demand it was. But by that point, Jono Howard had left the AKA studio. So now Rachel Connor became the full-time head writer, produced the 5th season. The internet will tell you there's 6 seasons. There's there's a 5th season of 12 episodes and a 6th season of 1 episode. So no, there's only a 5th season.
1 episode, weird.
And a 5th season that they made last 3 years. But that final season,
What is this, Ren and Stimpy?
it kind of is. But the 5th season, they decided to shake things up by having summer end, and they go to school. Every episode of the 5th season is set in school, and it's an interesting change up. I like the 5th season episodes are still pretty good, and so they're sporadically airing new episodes. And then instead of a 6th season, instead they hire AK Studios to do Ed and Eddy's really big picture show, a 90-minute TV movie to end the series. And as Ed says at the end of the episode, over 130 episodes, 4 holiday specials in a movie, they finally make friends. And it actually ends with a surprisingly good payoff. And it's in widescreen. Like, I think it's the only Ed thing made in widescreen. It's fun to watch, where it actually delivers on Eddy bragging about his older brother the entire series. He finally shows up, and it leads to a fun conclusion to the series. And it was so popular too that it got multiple video games on like the PlayStation 2, GameCube, Xbox, and GBA. But in 2009, it ended its run a decade straight.
Wow.
Like over a decade, because it was January 99 to like fall 2000.
I was in high school when it started, and I was getting out of grad school when it ended.
Man, you went through way more changes than even the Ed boys
Yes,
did.
too much college. It was a mistake.
So AK Studios since then has seemingly been operational, but they haven't actually produced another series since then. And I'm not totally sure what's going on with it, honestly. Like in 2009, before the movie premiered, it was announced that Antonucci had signed a deal with Wild Brain, which was the thing that used to be Deke. We talked about
Oh my
in the Sonic
God, that's
thing.
so confusing.
It was like right after Cookie Jar became Wild Brain. They signed a deal with Antonucci for a series. Nothing came out. Like, so I think he developed with them for a while. Nothing happened. In 2015, a pilot is released of a short he made called Snot Rocket. That's about a boy and his dog kind of thing. It's fun. And in other interviews, he said he's trying to make more Lupo. He's thinking about that. But it's weird because you'd think with Ed and Eddy under his belt, you think he could make a lot of stuff, or that would open doors.
But I think also he's like in his 60s now, so maybe he's not as tapped into what would be a successful show.
I also think he comes off as very iconoclastic and definitely not a guy who would fit in the increasingly corporate world of animation. Like, I shared with you that smoking interview he did where he's just like, man, fucking Lasseter. It's like, boy, you're not making friends here.
Yeah, I feel like we are thankfully in a more touchy-feely time, an inclusive time, and I don't know, I'm not saying he's like a racist or sexist or anything, but he is an old-fashioned guy. Maybe he comes off someone like, oh, I don't want to work with him.
I know. In his interviews, he comes off as like a cranky Gen Xer who even in the 2019 interview I watched with him where the interviewer is being nice and he's trying to lead him towards complimenting anything new. And he's like, well, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse did a lot of great stuff. I think it has a lot of personality. He's like, yeah, I guess, but you can't really with digital. And he just goes into this whole anti-digital speech, and it's just like, I don't know. I think he has artistic things to give, but I think he's too stuck in the past. I get the sense from it. Also, like, if that's how he acts in interviews, I just can't see him being able to make a deal with a current day executive.
Yeah, it's going to be rough.
Plus, his types of shows are not what Cartoon Network makes these days.
No, although I want to return to this, I will say. There should be a revival of the loud, gross cartoons.
But not Ed and Eddy specifically. But
as of this recording, I guess Comedy Central is trying to reboot Ren and Stimpy, so we'll see. Maybe that will have a gross out renaissance.
Maybe. Yeah, and then, and the Animaniacs aren't exactly gross out, but they're coming back soon, too.
We haven't seen any footage of it as of this recording in late August, so I'm hoping it's good.
And also, one of the actors on Twitter, she had said, like, Antonucci doesn't want to make more. Like, he's not, even if he is getting offers like, hey, more Ed and Eddy, I think he wants to move beyond it. I also did get this is just me making assumptions from interviews, but I get the sense that I don't think he wants to be defined by this show. I think he doesn't want to be the Ed and Eddy guy.
Too bad for him, because that's basically what the show does. I mean, it was his hit, right?
Yeah, but he wants to be the Lupo guy,
Let's meet his family. Let's see what's going on with his his life.
He tried to make a Meet Lupo's Family thing before Ed, and Eddy. He tried to make that, but it didn't come together. And yeah, it's also really weird. Here's another weird thing about Ed, and Eddy's legacy before we end this history segment is it is weirdly unavailable. Like,
yeah,
I don't understand it.
Cartoon Network owns it.
Yeah, I thought like season 3, that's on Amazon Prime and iTunes. You can buy it. But it's not streaming there. It's not on Boomerang. It's not on HBO Max. Not only that, like the first 2 seasons got put on DVD, but that's it. And on top of that, a lot of the throwback characters appear in the crossover video games, not the Ed characters. They've only, when they appeared in video games, it was only their games. So I don't know. I wonder if AK Studios has like some level of permission on that, or it's like some level of red tape they don't want to involve in. I don't know.
They are on DVD for cheap, at least the first couple seasons. I don't know how far they went with the DVD releases, but I was just searching for it. It's like, season 1, $9.99.
Yeah. At least the DVDs are regularly available. So I don't think there's like an entire like no Eds policy, because in our Friends show, Crossover Nexus, when they do the super punch of every cartoon character, Eddy is in there. So they were allowed to be in that. So maybe there's some permission in there, but it just makes me wonder if like, because this was the first outside studio, if there's some level of creative control they have over how the characters appear, and that's why you don't see them pop up as much as you do the Hanna-Barbera created characters. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, for being so popular, it is very odd. And I mean, it's a gross show and it's a mean show with lots of screaming, but there are more offensive things on like Boomerang and whatnot. I don't think there's anything really content-wise keeping this away from streaming networks.
And this is the time to strike. Like, the kids who watch this are now 10 years older. They are ready.
They're 10 years older. They can't have jobs. They can't go to college. They need something to do.
And a show about their childhoods, that's what they want.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But all right, that's the history of Ed, and Eddy. When we come back, we're going to talk about the 2 episodes, Brother, Can You Spare an Ed, and The Day the Ed Stood Still.
We'll be right back with Ed, and Eddy.
1 year ago, we embarked upon our most ambitious project to date. This January, we hope to finish it. Ed, and Eddy, coming this January to Cartoon Network.
Hey everybody, welcome to The Break. It's Henry Gilbert, and I'm holding my silent partner here, Plank, as our third co-host.
Hey everybody, it's Bob Mackey. I spit out my giant jawbreaker just to do this ad.
And welcome to The Break. A big thank you to our premium patron who requested this one, Isaac Fox. I hope you really enjoyed this. We had a great time going back to a classic Cartoon Network series. I always like talking about that era, and I learned a ton about its connection to classic animation. But, you know, there are more supporters on Patreon than just Isaac Fox. All of them help us do this as our full-time jobs.
That's right. If you go to patreon.com/Talking Simpsons, sign up there for $5 a month, you get all these podcasts 1 week ahead of time and ad-free, and also access to everything behind the $5 paywall. That includes all of the bonus podcasts we've done behind that paywall for the past 3.5 years. They'll all be immediately available to you. That includes all of our limited miniseries like Talking Futurama Seasons 1, Season 2 Part 1, and the currently unraveling Futurama Season 2 Part 2, along with things like Talking of the Hill, Talking Mission Hill. There's so many things going on there, over 100 bonus podcasts, including interviews with Simpsons All-Stars, end-of-season specials, and deleted scene specials for Talking Simpsons are there too. You'll get a ton for your $5 a month, all immediately right off the bat by signing up at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. But if you sign up for $10 a month, you'll get all of that stuff, plus access to one mega-long podcast once a month that is only for patrons of that level or higher. And what is that, Henry?
Bob, you're talking about the What a Cartoon Movie podcast. Now, you get to hear so many podcasts with me and Bob, but there is a back catalog of over 100 hours of classic podcasts that you can only hear if you're a $10 and up subscriber. You get to hear each month the preview of it, like you just last week got to hear the one for Scooby-Doo Zombie Island. But if you want to hear the full, often over 4 hours of us talking about an animated feature film, head up to the $10 level or start there and you will get access to all of them and a brand new one each month. This month we're going to be doing an Aardman classic, one of the films from the creators of Wallace and Gromit. Before that, the previously mentioned Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island. We did Space Jam. We did Aladdin sequel, Return of Jafar, and a ton in the back catalog, all of which I think you'd really enjoy. And you just got to head up to the $10 level to get access to over 2 years worth of them at this point now. Crazy. We've now hit our second year of just doing the What a Cartoon Movie. So please sign up at that level at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons to hear it all.
And if you've never signed up before, it's so easy to do at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons. You sign up, you get access to a code that you have access to at all times. You just drop that code into whatever you use to listen to podcasts, and that will let you download our bonus podcast alongside all the free podcasts you already listen to. And there is also a great Patreon app for any smart device you might have. So either way you decide to do it, it is so easy to access all of the great content waiting for you at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
Okay, let's head back to the cul-de-sac for our chat about an episode of Ed, and Eddy.
Some will fear it. Some will be humbled by its presence. But this January, someone is going to put it in his mouth and eat it.
Jawbreakers!
Coming to Cartoon Network.
It's getting away!
Ed, and Eddy.
Wait! Stop! We won't hurt you! Look out!
Ed, and Eddy. New this January on Cartoon Network.
Were we just here a minute ago? I feel familiar.
Okay, so we're back. We're starting off here with Brother, Can You Spare an Ed? And this one has cartoon director credit for Russ Mooney, who normally is like animation director or timing director on a bunch of Ed episodes. It's kind of rare that somebody else gets even... Antonucci is director credit on every episode.
Yeah, I
of
was
Ed,
scrolling
Ed,
through
Eddy.
Wikipedia's list. It's all him.
That, to me, feels slightly selfish. It's like, I don't know, dude, let somebody else get an animation director credit on your thing. That's another thing that makes me kind of sour on him a little. It's like, you're not only like a cranky old animation traditionalist, but you didn't let anybody else get a director credit. Like, how are they supposed to move up in this business?
And maybe he's just that good, but how could he possibly direct this much animation?
Right, yeah, that's more like he was supervising director of the whole series.
Yeah.
And then said, as the guy running the company, I also get credit on every episode. Same with like co-writing credit on every episode. Like, come on, just let the writer
You
have
could be the
credit.
showrunner and have like writing on every episode. You don't have to credit yourself.
Everybody knows you directed
Yeah.
it. Everybody knows Gennady Tartakovsky worked on every Dexter, but he didn't have to like give himself every director credit. It's just, I don't know. It feels off to me, but
We see another remnant of the 90s, though, is the hand-painted title card.
Yeah.
I always love them.
I miss them so
Yeah.
much. The wonderfully hideous hand-painted title cards. I mean, they're not gone. They're still around. Like the previous mentioned Craig of the Creek does.
That's true.
it.
They're not
Yeah.
They're not as like standard.
Yeah. It almost feels like a throwback when a show like Adventure Time even did it, you know? But Russ Mooney, he has a lot of animation timer jobs as well. His biggest credits to this point were working on a ton of Disney afternoon shows. He had like director, animation director on a lot of Disney afternoon shows. Also was supervising director on a couple seasons of Cat Dog and also the Punky Brewster cartoon.
Cat Dog, Don't like it.
No.
Not a fan.
Boo on
Does anyone
Cat
like Cat Dog?
Maybe
there's, if you were a kid, maybe.
I watched a interview with Billy West of like going through all of Billy West's voices, and I kept waiting for them to talk about some other ones, and then they stop on Cat Dog because in Cat Dog he played like that rabbit guy who's their main antagonist who goes like, hey, you're not supposed to be in here. And I just thought like, who paused on Cat Dog on his credits? He played Shaggy a couple times. I wanted to hear him talk about playing Shaggy, and I got to hear about Cat Dog.
Cat Dog is forgotten. If you're a Cat Dog fan, let us know what we're missing here.
Maybe one of you premium patrons will make us watch Cat Dog. I hated Cat Dog, even though I love every actor in it too. But anyway, yeah. So the opening of the show, it's a really cute little thing too. I love that it's just the three characters and they're moving the camera around, and it's just it lets you see each of them with like some weird cartoon logic to how what even are they grabbing the like they're being filmed by a camera in the middle of nowhere. Like
it's a fun 30 seconds of really good animation.
And so the episode begins with hula dancing of all things. Both of these shorts, they start with one scheme falling apart that leads into a new scheme.
That's true. And I was looking up the instrument that Ed was playing, and I was like, it's not an auto harp, it's not a zither, it's a tremoloa.
Okay.
Which is what you find in Hawaiian music. I looked it up. It's like this very weird like string instrument that sits flat. That's what he's playing.
I wondered if this was a wink to SpongeBob, perhaps, but
it was a middle finger.
According to the Wikipedia, this as Ed Double D here says, I hate playing this. It had been set up before that he's really good at playing this guitar in season 1. In the final episode of season 1, he's playing it, but he hates to play it too. So the show already is like engaging in its deep lore at this point. But yes, hula dance lessons are interrupted.
Double D, that sounds so real.
Don't rub salt in the wound, Eddie. You know how much I detest this instrument.
Come on, you're setting a mood, Double D. The music, the plan, the lump. 1, 2, 3, 4. Stick it out right out the door. It's a gold mine, I tell ya. Hula dance lessons are huge.
In a pig's eye. He's over here, Jimmy. Tell him, Sarah. Tell him. Dad, stop your wiggling around.
Stick it out, no need to pout.
Listen to me, you idiot. I want you to...
Get lost, twerp. Ed's working.
Buzz off, Eddie. Fathead.
The show's so loud, chaotic, and I think you really do need to see the animation too, because a lot of this is carried by just how fluid and vivid the animation is too.
I like that Double D is giving live instrumentation to all of the stuff happening
until Eddie tells him to shut up.
That's so great. Like. That's great. Also the hearing Ed's voice here, his accent that he's given, it reminds me of like the Red Green show of Canadian Hicks kind of voice that he's got, like, especially as like, stick it out, no need to pout, like that.
Does this take place in Canada?
It's Peachtree Grove, I think it's called. They don't, it's not named any specific place. It's any town, any place. I mean, like the dollar bill that's handed to somebody here, we don't see a president on it.
True.
But I don't know. Canadian money is lots of colors, isn't it?
It's pretty. So, there's loonies, there's toonies.
Nobody wants they're asking for quarters, aren't they, though? Not toonies. So I guess it is, it's in America.
A toonie is 2 loonies.
Oh yeah, the 25 cents, that's like the $5 of Ren and Stimpy.
Oh yeah.
Everything
I've
has
got
to
$5.
And yeah, the Sarah, she is always accompanied by Jimmy, who's a very soft, effeminate boy who only likes to play with the girls. The other boys are too mean to him.
I was that boy.
They do some gay jokes with him over the series too.
He's like a Martin Princey kind of character.
Very much so, yeah. He's very artistic. He likes to put on shows. I believe it's in the Christmas special, instead of making gingerbread men, he makes gingerbread sailors.
And that headgear is like 25 years out of date too.
Oh, and also he shows shows up usually wearing some kind of bandage because he's injured usually. He's a very soft boy that Antonucci says he was based on a wussy cousin that him and his brothers would, or the other boys in the family would bully. So
nice.
It's a story of bullying put on screen.
He made so much money from it.
And yeah, I also like that Eddy kind of has this is a hard show to talk about with all the edge you gotta say. Eddy has a real like Daffy Duck kind of quality where he just like looks at the camera and is like, stop it already, or who writes this? Or he
is the Chuck Jones Daffy kind of character.
Yeah.
Like immediately greedy and but he's a huge dick.
You're right. Very much. Yeah, the greed is very much Daffy. And also never learns a lesson, never apologizes.
Gets hurt for his greed.
That's right. Yeah, his physical atonement is usually the payoff to most episodes. So Sarah shows up and tells she's the little sister but can boss around the indestructible lummox that is Ed. Though by this point, she should probably know not to trust Ed with doing anything.
Especially like because of his two accomplices.
Right.
It just complicates the matter.
I think it is, though, that she enjoys jerking him around more than she does trusting him with money. I think she's like, you know what? I'm going to boss him around even if I shouldn't. And so she demands that he buy fudge. That also, I mean, does that feel like kind of there's so many jokes they get away with in here.
Yeah.
Jimmy wanting fudge feels like a joke.
It does. Yeah. Maybe they weren't allowed to take it any further, but the word fudge is funny too.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, some people like to pack fudge, I've heard. So
they have factories for that now.
Yeah.
I'm not a fudge fan. I don't care for it. Too sweet for me, as Agnes would say.
If somebody offers me some fudge, I'm going to eat it. It's a fun word to say.
It just like it hurts adult teeth now. Like if I bite into fudge, it's just like I can just feel years of enamel.
I need
floating
some
away.
Cleaner fudge than that. Or I mean, look, I'll prefer it to like peanut brittle and other teeth breakers or jaw. That's okay. They picked jawbreakers for this show because they suck. Antonucci's like, I wanted jawbreakers to be it because they suck.
Fudge is like the anti-jawbreaker. Just like you can barely cut it. It just is like chocolate slime.
Chocolate slime that just coats your mouth, and after one bite, you're like, why didn't I just have a chocolate bar? It's much lighter.
It makes you thirsty too.
If you put a little mint in it, I made some Christmassy fudge with mint in it. It kind of cools it off a little bit.
Yeah, it just it's like a chocolate sponge in your mouth. But yeah, jawbreakers do suck. And I remember like when I would like half watch the show in the background, I just remember the giant jawbreakers and how like I would buy those as a kid, but you just have like a slimy ball you're just like licking all day.
There's absolutely no way to eat it all or keep it in your mouth the entire way. And then plus it's called a jawbreaker because you're not supposed to bite it. You'll fuck up your teeth.
I'm just thinking about it now. My teeth hurt.
Remember that the ads for like the mega jawbreaker that would have the cross section that shows you like here's every layer of it.
Like the geological record of all the jawbreakers.
But that's why he picked it, because he's like, kids don't like him, they suck. And the way it's drawn with all of them having like basically a thing bigger than their head sticking out of their cheeks with the drool dripping down because you can't fully close your mouth and keep the fucking drool. It's so gross.
I think it's a way for them to make like drug references too, like because they all crave the jawbreaker and like and
their orgasmic delight in having them too.
Double D, like his knees start knocking when he gets a taste.
I know.
So
but yes, Ed is told to go buy some fudge, and there's another fun stupid character exchange of like, or my name's not Ed. Maybe.
That's a real Goofy line, I think. I think they're drawing from Goofy with this character.
Yeah. Definitely he's from the same school of thought as Goofy. I also like too that Eddy immediately is just like, I should just hold your money. Give me the money right now. Money. Like he's a fiend. Eddy is the villain of any show. Like this is an inverse show where Eddy is this shitty asshole who just constantly, the second he sees money, he's like, I'm going to steal this money from me.
That money should be mine. Yeah.
He's a bad guy. All the other kids who don't want to hang out with him are correct. They should not want to be around him. All he wants is to steal from them. Yeah, and you're right. When Eddy says he has badly drawn fingers, that's not fair. His fingers look fine.
They're immaculately drawn.
But Ed doesn't give the money up immediately and just walks away. There's another like joke. I'm like, oh, that's kind of dirty, of just where Eddy is upside down and his legs are splayed.
Yeah.
And Double D goes like, oh, like have some modesty, and he closes his legs. I'm like, that's another getting away with it kind of moment.
But Double D's improving the show for the censors.
Yes,
he's saying this is filthy.
He's like a living censor character. character. I mean, he also is a very like, if he's like his nerdy run style of elbows up and like inward walk, like it's
funny.
Yeah.
This premiered in 99. It reminds me of Kevin from Mission Hill. We just did all of Mission Hill recently on the Patreon.
Yeah, he's a lot like it, except he's an only child. But yeah, so they head to the candy store. Ed says he has to buy this for the persnickety Jimmy, which I love that when he throws out a smart word like that. But then we go old school cartoon as devils and angels argue over the fate of this dollar bill.
Stop right there! It's Sarah's money, and if fudge Sarah wants, fudge Sarah gets.
The guy's cracked, Ed. I know that you know that jawbreakers are the way to go.
Don't you listen to him, Ed. Sarah's depending on you.
Forget Sarah. Jawbreakers, Ed.
Ed, you gave Sarah your word.
And Sarah gave him cash. Jawbreakers, Ed.
Stand firm and deliver, Ed. Let integrity be your guide.
Double D's right, Ed. Integrity in Latin means buy jawbreakers. Get the picture?
Yes.
No, Ed.
No.
That money doesn't belong to you, and you are obligated and responsible for its expenditure. Fudge is the honorable path.
That's stupid. Come on, Ed. You know you wanna. Who's gonna know?
You'll know, Ed. And the guilt will smother you like so many wet blankets.
Hey, Tinkerbell, let's chit-chat.
I do like that they fight inside of his head.
Yes, yeah, but it's all just in Ed's imagination that they become those two. But the way they are, also just the cartoony sound effects as they go in there. There's some great, just again, like you said, very loud, but good sound design work there. I love the lines like "fudge is the honorable path," like and integrity in Latin means by jawbreakers. I also really love the drawings of like Ed just is in crisis thought of like as he's looking between the fudge and the jawbreakers, and they don't show you the candy shop owner as well. This again feels like when he was 10, it was 1967 for Antonucci. This feels like his childhood candy shop.
Just kids running wild.
No candy shop of 2002 looked like this. Like you'd have to go to Disneyland to go to a candy shop that looks like this one.
I wish I could.
But eventually Ed breaks down, buys the jawbreakers, and the boys celebrate the orgasmic pleasure of thievery.
You made the right choice, my fine fish-faced friend.
I'm speechless. I mean, how can you two just sit there drooling over your ill-gotten gains? Have you no shame?
Who is she, Double D?
Ed, give Double D his cut.
I refuse to be part of any of this, Eddy.
Open wide and say Bob, Double D!
Not if it was the last edible substance on our planet, Ed. How can something so bad taste so good?
When someone else coughs up for it, that's how.
I do like how Ed opens Double D's mouth like a trash can. He stomps on his foot, and his head like unhinges backwards. It's a great little drawing.
And Ed does what he's told to do. He's a good enforcer for Eddy. I like too that it's the Three Stooges vibe comes to me too of like sometimes Eddy will like smack around Ed in ways that again I'm like, well, it wouldn't be on TV now, but it works in the show because Ed feels nothing. Like he just like eventually goes like, no, and he just stands up. Like
Eddy is their leader.
And yeah, you're right. They are junkies who just got their fix. Like that's sitting on like the street corner, the curbside even. Yeah. And then talk about weird drawings of them walking back from the candy store with Ed pregnant with a jawbreaker.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
He's not supposed to swallow it.
I also, another great joke of like, did you forget your name? I write it in my underpants. I'm hand wash only.
We see his how disgusting his underpants are, which will come back later, right?
Yes, yeah. And Eddy didn't make a great plan here. Normally he has better plans, but in this one, once they remember what's going to happen, that's when Eddy's like, look, here's dirt. Just call that fudge. Fuck it.
And let's just avoid her, right?
Yeah. And also I like Eddy's reaction to Double D's like long speech. Just like, who writes this guy's stuff?
I did like that. I laughed at that.
And only once he tells Ed like about the fudge, Ed remembers like, oh right, I spent my little sister's money. And his little nervous hopping around has like pinball sound effects too. I really like. And Sarah arrives in time looking for her fudge, and she should know by now if they're not holding a bag of fudge that they didn't buy it, and she should just commence to pounding.
But I like how they're just in his clothing looking for it.
Yes. The way things can shrink squash and stretch as much as they want.
Like later, Ed will come out of a can.
Oh, that's right.
In the second episode we're doing.
So yes, Sarah then realizes the fudge was not purchased. They try to get Ed to be silent about it and not say anything. Ed gives up immediately because he loves his sister, and he admits that he stole and asks for forgiveness. Sarah's about to beat the crap out of him, but then Double D jumps in the way. In the past, Sarah had a crush on Double D, so I think maybe he's using those emotions on her. If he stands in between, he's like, wait, listen to me. But he has a pitch to make things up.
Dearest Sarah, I speak for all of us when I say how sorry we are in spending your allowance. Is that so? Why, yes. Isn't that right, fellows? And are prepared to pay you back every cent. With the current market-bearing interest, of course.
What are you talking about? Interest?
Interest? We can buy even more fudge, Sarah. Deal.
How are we supposed to pay her back? We're broke.
You got us into this. Well,
Dog meat, Eddie.
And that's another great cartoony joke I like, that when Double D jumps in between, Sarah stops in midair.
Yeah.
And as he explains to her, she's listening while just hanging in the air.
A lesser show would have done a Matrix joke or something.
Ugh, yeah, they would have, yeah.
But when she falls on Jimmy, I like the hawk noise, like the screeching hawk. I missed the very noisy sound design of 90s shows. Just like, here, just put like a zebra sound on this or whatever. Who knows?
It's something I loved in OKKO that Toby and Ian were telling us about how if they had a thing just like drop or just a thing falls to the ground, they're like, is there a Hanna-Barbera sound we can just put in there? Like that's great sound design that you can appreciate it much more in this audio only
For
stuff.
sure.
And yeah, this episode feels a little weird because the first half is them deciding to steal from a little girl, and then the last 4 minutes just feels like them kind of killing time with schemes until the end of it. They're like, well, what scheme would you think of? This, I guess.
This show is just all about schemes.
Yeah, it's schemes upon schemes.
Schemes, and they're confidence men or con men, as some people would call them.
I think all this scheming too, and Danny Antonucci says that he says the Eds are 3 facets of himself. And then he's like, oh, Eddie's me. I'm just like, so you're like a scheming liar who takes from everybody around
Stealing all that fudge from Cartoon Network.
Yeah, telling Cartoon Network you're making fudge. Instead, you buy jawbreakers for yourself. So the fix that Eddy instantly comes up with is basically renting out Ed and Double D to have wedgies done to them. He's kind of a pimp here,
it's a pain pig service.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, I don't say that in a positive way when I say pimp. He's a bad person letting other people put their bodies on the line while he gets all the money.
It seems like not that shocking, but again, it's like, this is not a Craig of the Creek plot line. Like, let's have this wedgie service.
I think this is such an imitatable act. I could definitely, you try to write an episode about giving each other wedgies in a cartoon show for kids today. I feel like definitely the moral guardians at the network would be like, we can't teach kids how to give wedgies. We're getting them to forget how to.
I feel like when I was in school, wedgies are really phased out in favor of psychological abuse, because I was never wedgied, but I feel like everyone who grew up 20 or 30 years before me was, and that's why you saw wedgies in all the kids' cartoons and all the TV shows.
I think among brothers and cousins in my growing up, wedgies would sometimes be done there because it's kept in the family. It's not like a teacher would find out and get mad at you.
I had maybe a few family wedgies. They were all in good fun.
Yeah, all in, kids overreact to wedgies today. Wedgies and dodgeball. It's no. Wedgies kids should know how to do wedgies. But yeah, it's so weird how Eddy does just like rent out their services for pain in this way. Double D does not agree to, so he's not a willing participant in this. And I like too that Kevin, the second he hears like wedgies, he's like, oh yeah, like he just runs straight to it. I just love his dorks epithet. But yes, Kevin buys himself some wedgies.
Step right up, folks. Your dream come true. Give a wedgie just 25 cents.
Wedgies?
Hike 'em high while they're still dry. Hello there, valued customer. Not me, them. That'll be 25 cents. Delighted.
wait one doggone second here.
Me first, come on.
Hey, let me see that. You're short.
It's mine.
I want my money.
dorks are bent. I'm out of here. Don't leave now. I can set the boys up for another round. What do you say? Not for me, man. I'm spent. Oh, come on.
My money now!
Get some butts in there.
Yeah.
I welcome all butts, too.
Some classic cartoon butts. But again, them letting Kevin pay Eddy to do something to the Eds, and then he walks away like, I'm spent. Like, that feels like a getting away with it.
Especially when butts are involved. And I did notice, like, a lot of the violence does happen off screen, though.
That's true, yeah.
But I did really like Sarah biting Eddie's arms to get him to release the quarters. It looked really painful. Like, his arms get swollen when she bites into them.
That's great.
It's great animation.
And but you don't feel bad for Eddy because he's an asshole, and he's especially like, not only did he steal her money once, but here he just earned the money that he's supposed to get back to her, and he's definitely planning to not do that. Like, she is correct to be watching him at all times. Also, Ed's many like non sequiturs, like one more for the Gipper, like that's very Ralph Wiggum to me.
It is,
too.
yeah.
But yeah, so the wedgies aren't working out, so Eddy comes up with another quick plan of piñatas, which I really love this one too.
Pinatas? Me first, Johnny! Pop up a quarter and go to town.
Right on! Here you go, Eddy. Give me that!
Johnny, please, open your eyes, lad. Do we look like pinatas?
A shoe? Boring! Look what I got, Plank! Coconut earmuffs!
Now, about that interest.
I can see right through your hobbled plan, Eddy. And if you think this will withhold our giving Sarah her money back, you've got another thing coming, mister. Oh, yeah!
Even though it's off screen, I love just the idea of a child beating another child with a wooden board.
Yes.
In the cartoon.
I love the way that Johnny, like the way he swings a stick of like, it's just one arm moving like bang, bonk, bonk. Like it kind of reminds me of like Bam Bam smashing stuff. Like, but I also love that Double D is the viewer who's just like, come on, we're not piñatas, please. And then he just gets beaten. It only hit me here that the coconut earmuffs are the coconut bikini top that Ed wore at the start of the episode.
I'm too stupid to get that in this current state.
I mean, the hula lessons joke is a long time
Yeah,
ago.
I guess I was just like, it's just random humor or whatever.
But it's a joke about wearing a bra on your head, so it's more thinky than we thought. Also, I like that just a pile of dirt just falls out of Ed, and then when Ed gets back up, he just starts shoving it back in his pocket.
Ed has poor hygiene. It's been established.
Which is why, like, Double D's reaction to having the filthy rag of his underpants was hitting his face. Oh, God. But yes, the episode finally ends, though, with Double D having no more, and he turns the tables on Eddy, and we get Eddy beaten for pennies.
Step right up, Rolf. It only costs 1 penny. You must be pulling Rolf's finger. Rolf shall return!
I'll just take your turn till you get back then.
At a penny a turn, it may take a while to pay you back, Sarah. That's okay, Double D. I've got all the time in the world.
And I've got a jar on my buttocks.
Rolf would like this many goes at the Ed Bowie.
You've got to be kidding me. Hey, wait. That's enough to cover Sarah's allowance. Right, Sarah?
Stand back, as Rolf has eaten Mama's pickled cabbage.
Oh, man. Oh, man.
I do like how Ed gets his comeuppance, but I feel like this could have been more elaborate. I don't know what they were allowed to get away with the end gag of beating a child for money.
Yeah.
But it's just like the gag is that it's kind of like the piñata thing, but Ed is hanging from the tree, and there's like a seesaw plank in front of him hanging under his chin, and you hit the plank with a hammer, and it smacks him under his mouth.
Yeah, it seems a little like the carnival game of the bell, like hit the strength test where you hit the paddle and the bell thing, except it's the most involved it gets is that he has been wedgied tied to a tree as well, so that's how he's hanging, and I like that it hits him specifically under his teeth, so it's smashing his teeth at the same time.
Again, it's that 90s spirit. The episode ends with a child being beaten mercilessly, hanging from a tree.
But fortunately, again, it's like a guy who has been a dick the entire cartoon, so you don't feel too
And he
bad.
barely looks like a human being anyways. He's like just this pink weirdo.
And then they're doing it all for pennies just to make it last even longer. And also just, another non sequitur, like, and I've got a jar on my buttocks.
But
like,
he does. It's there.
It's fun to hear buttocks in a
Buttocks
cartoon.
is good, yeah.
All right, so we come to the second half of this, The Day the Ed Stood Still. This one co-written by Mike Kubat, who, from looking at it, it sounds like he was right below Jono Howard as the story editor. He has co-writing credit on a lot of these, so he worked a lot, did most of the same jobs as Jono from interviews I saw, and he also mainly just works in the Vancouver animation field, doesn't have a lot of other gigs going on outside of that, so not a lot of work on things we've really heard of. But just like the previous one, this begins with an intro scheme that is interrupted. I like that it's a carnival, like a street carnival, and they put a lot of work into this. Obviously, I'm sure Eddy didn't do much of the work, but Ed, I'm sure, did stuff. The designs, I like the homemade designs of all the carnival games. I think my favorite is the Are You Tall drawing.
Yeah, that's right.
Doesn't make any sense. Like, are you tall? Compare yourself to this. Stand next to it. You'll see. But at this carnival, Ed doesn't have much faith in it.
Ha ha ha. Very funny, Eddy. But in order to attract a crowd, one needs to demonstrate the use of these archaic arcade games.
Is that what you're trying to do? Step aside. Let the pro demonstrate.
Like me, like me, like me, like me.
Hold still, Lumpy, so I can hit ya.
Bravo! Well done, Eddy. You've convinced me. Your skill and expertise in mundane, misleading, and moth-ridden carnival games makes me want to throw caution to the wind and give you all my money.
You're making fun of me, aren't you?
Monster! I want to be a monster! Look at me! I am a monster! I am just a monster in a boy's body.
If only for a day, I wish I could enjoy the serenity of Ed's world.
Hey!
That's another joke about beating a little kid up for money. Another like beat up my friend for money gag.
You're right, yeah.
I do like how like when he starts the whacking Ed or whatever, like it kicks him in the ass to get him into the machinery.
You're right. It's not even that like, oh, he put money in, time to stick my head out. It's like, oh, the boot kicked me. I need to shove my head out. And him just yelling, whack me, whack me, whack me.
I feel like they know what they're doing. Whack me.
Yeah. But I also really like how Ed, I can identify a lot with bosses I didn't like, of how Double D goes like, oh yes, this definitely makes me want to give away all my money. And how Eddy isn't completely sure that he's being made fun of there. And yeah, more great sound effects too, as Ed runs across to the picture of the monster, that horse sound too, just because he's like a wild, uncontrollable thing.
And he breaks through the part of the picture without a cutout in it.
Yeah, he's unstoppable. He's an unstoppable, dumb idiot. Previous episodes have established that Ed has Superman-like strength. Like there's one where he just pulls the sewer out of the ground, like in full, like
Again,
Popeye.
I think playing to some kind of stereotype for certain kinds of people.
Sure, yeah. And that's why, like here, by playing pretend, he doesn't know his own strength. Perhaps
he becomes magical in this.
Yes, yeah. I mean, there's more than a little of mice and men in this character, for sure.
Yes, yeah. Of course.
Actually, I guess that him and Eddy together are those two characters, or maybe.
So is Eddy going to shoot Ed at the end of the series?
I guess Double D would really be the one to do it, and Eddy wouldn't be the one to shoot him.
Tell him about the rabbits.
But yeah, also it's like Eddy is getting mad at Ed for breaking everything. That again feels so much like Mo just yelling at Curly kind of moment. It's like, why do you have to do all this? Like, but I just want to do. I start feeling bad for the more I do that voice.
So I mean, some of the violence is off screen. It's interesting what's off screen because like doesn't Eddy like mangle Ed off screen? You hear like a bunch of fighting noises.
Yeah, he's smashing him. Yeah, but then Ed just stands up out of it fine. So I think that's their cheat around it. They're like, well, Ed is fine. Eddy didn't actually hurt him.
It's interesting because like at a certain point in Ren and Stimpy, it was like Ren, you can't see the slap connect. It can happen like off screen, but you can't have like a character being struck in the face.
Or like a full strangulation, like hands around the neck. Kids will imitate that on their own brother. And so, yes, when they see how happy he is to be a monster, it hits Double D that they could just turn turn him into a monster. And I like that Eddy's reaction to that of like, wait, customers are practically suckers. I'm in. And then Ed's reply of like, monster for Ed, good I will be. And so, yes, they decide it's time to dress him up as a monster. And I really love how it becomes a B-movie monster kind of thing. Like, it's once the thing is over Ed's eyes, you only see it from his perspective. They don't show you the monster full on for like a couple minutes.
I think they should have waited a bit longer.
Yeah, I guess.
You see too much of it.
Yeah.
But I'm okay with this cartoon, but I think they held off for long enough, but maybe a little longer would have been nice.
Yeah, maybe they're the borders hit a wall of like, there's only so much we can, if you want the monster to do this, you need to be able to see him some more. But I also like too that when they put it on, Double D's like, I'll go get a mirror. And he starts taking so long that Eddy goes like, man, what's he doing? Making a mirror? I love that line. And as Ed is activated, the red tint goes over his eyes and he decides he's going to like beat the shit out of Eddy.
I love that silhouette shot when they cut outside the garage and you see the window of like whatever Ed has become attacking Eddy.
That's great. Yeah. I guess, I say it's a B-movie monster thing, but I suppose it is more alien.
For sure. Yeah.
But as Ed breaks loose, Double D sees the damage.
I'm back! Father's garage! Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Curse the consequences of an only child.
Ed's an animal.
Ed?
Who else? That idiot attacked me, then busted through the garage growling like a monster.
I told you about Ed's overactive imagination.
Hey, don't look at me. I'm the one who got over-imaginated all over.
Ed's prone to overstimulation, Eddy. He can't control himself.
You're the one who dressed him up.
Happy! Heavens, it's Jimmy.
It's just fitting that Jimmy is the first one to be beat up there.
Yeah, he has to be.
But yeah, I get a little bit of Double D of Ferris Bueller's Best Friend of just like Father's Garage. And I think it says a lot about him that he's an only child. Like I think his repressiveness comes from that. Ed has a little sister and Eddy has an unseen older brother, and that informs both of their relationships too. Like Ed is the big strong brother that protects his little sister, and Eddy is like the scrawny little brother who got picked on a lot by his older brother, who now is free of his older brother.
He's got a Napoleon complex.
Very much so, yeah. And I also kind of like their Eddy and Double D's exchange. It kind of feels like, the general and the scientist arguing in a B movie. I like that too. And yes, the superhuman strength is busted loose. Jimmy has been captured first. And the other cul-de-sac kids, by this point again, blame the Eds first. If something weird is happening, just say, it's definitely the Ed boys. Fuck them. Let's go beat them up first. But instead, they're reacting like an actual monster is here.
And Eddy just thinks it's very funny the
I
entire time. I like his response. Just, I want to watch the chaos.
I know, he barely wants to have a scheme, though later he will say, like, I'll figure a way to make a buck out of this if it kills me. But mostly he's just like a cruel asshole who's watching people suffer. I guess in his mind, he's like, they were mean to me first. But so we get to see Johnny and Plank. They run away into the abandoned construction site. Another great monster place.
Like a junkyard, really, right?
Oh, yeah. And and Johnny and Plank, too, a quick aside about them, that the Antonucci says it's based on a kid he knew growing up who just never let go of his blanket, but obviously he can't do that.
Right. I like the Plank with the face drawn on it.
He made a real point, strictly in the rules, that the character of Plank cannot act. You can't change his face. He always looks like that. Like, no jokes on Plank doing anything that isn't what a block of wood with crayon on it can do. He was very strict about that, which I like that Plank he has his full personality who says things that Johnny replies to. I mean, yes, is this ableist in a way as well? Like the Ed jokes? Sure. Yes. Yeah. What do you want?
But what isn't in this crazy world of ours?
But yeah, the other kids are running off into the Naz, Kevin, Rolf are chasing with Johnny after Jimmy. And that's where Johnny runs into the box of Chunky Puffs, which is the recurring cereal of the show that both Ed and Johnny really love.
Apparently they're so good you can just eat them out of a junkyard and they're fine.
I think Johnny has a low, he doesn't get grossed out by much stuff, I think. And also I'm shocked they got away with when the tail grabs Johnny as he's eating. He even gets to turn blue. Like you can see he's suffocating.
It's a great piece of animation too. And you don't know what's happened to Ed at this point. Like, how can you do this?
Yes, he really does just fully think he's a monster here. And I also love that Double D's reaction is just like, oh, I've created a monster. Just great. He's Double D all freaked out about something. That's when he's funniest. And they also get a joke about Rolf like peeing his pants as he jumps on Kevin.
He said soil, so I choose to believe it's shitting.
Oh, yeah, okay. I believe that. Yeah. And then there's Naz there who, she's the girl every boy on the show has a crush on. Like, she's the top girl of the show. So everybody wants to impress Naz. Like, if Naz has a party, like, oh man, we gotta impress Naz. Like, and as you'll see later, Double D especially has a big crush on her. And then they find Plank without Johnny, and then they're really starting to freak out. They run into Kevin's house, board up the door. They won't let in the boys, and that's also where I love that Double D says, he wouldn't hurt to fly. Why, they're actually attracted to him. But Kevin doesn't understand that they're talking about Ed, not a monster. Though, again, I'm with Kevin. If those Ed boys wanted to get in my house, no way. They're probably going to destroy all my video games.
Maybe Double D if he's alone.
Sure, but he's never
alone.
Yeah. Eddy definitely is one of those kids who just like, oh, can I borrow that baseball card? It's your favorite. I just want to borrow it. And then you never see it again. He's a piece of shit kids. I'm still mad at the kid I just talked about in that story there. But yeah, so Kevin's wall of stuff doesn't even stop them. Ed's arm just busts in anyway and grabs him. And you get a rare moment of Kevin without his hat. His hat flies off and you see just has like 3 orange lines for hair on top.
Just knocks the barricade over completely.
Well, meanwhile, Eddy and Double D are trying to get in through the back door, which is like, that's breaking and entering, Eddy. Like, come on.
He's having a lot of problems with those windows, too.
I also love it. He goes like, I hate when you do that. Like, he's basically, again, a Daffy Duck moment, like you said. Yeah. And that's when the monster chases them out of the house, and we see the reveal of the homemade costume, which, it's a fun, just monster shot. And also, like, the dots on his stomach. I like the design of it a lot.
I like how it also makes no sense that he could control all of these parts and the tail, and he's suddenly much larger, too.
Yes, yeah, that it adds like 5 feet to him and that he can but that's how into his role as a monster he is here. And that's where Eddy has another side of like, great reveal. Like, he's just appreciating the show. And then comes another weird joke of Ed's intelligence, that he is obsessed with chickens. That feels like it's a chicken lover joke, kind of. Like, those were going around then.
Circus geek kind of thing. I mean, that's Gonzo.
Oh, yes.
That joke is like 30 years old at this point. Even older, right?
Yeah, though I also remember like South Park and Preacher did jokes about people who specifically fuck chickens.
Well, chicken fucking has never gone out of style.
And I looked up the video of like dirty jokes they got onto Ed and Eddy. And one of them was, there's a lot of dirty magazine jokes on the show that I still am like, wow, how'd they do this? But there's one where Eddy finds in Ed's bedroom what seems to be a dirty magazine, and it is a magazine filled with pictures of chicks. As in baby chickens, and Double D's response like, I didn't know they made magazines like this. That one especially seems to imply that Ed has sexual feelings towards chickens.
Interesting. Okay, that fits with his character then.
But they sacrifice Rolf's chicken to distract Ed long enough for them to run away. Gertrude, yeah. Another recurring livestock of him. Again, it's the idea of like, oh yeah, the immigrant boy has tons of livestock in his house.
He's a Balky style character.
Wow, he's actually very Balky. And so they run off, go up into the clubhouse. I like too that Double D is like, overwhelming fear is not an excuse for rudeness, Rolf. And then it just becomes Alien, where they're like hiding out, like, what are we gonna do? Double D actually has a moment of heroism here.
Let's remain calm, people. We'll be safe here.
Are you sure, Double D?
He's in his own little world now. The best thing is to just ignore him.
The beast circles with hunger! We must appease it with a sacrifice! Have it down, you jerk!
Hold it! You can't play his game. You'll only encourage this bad behavior.
So what? It's funny.
Let go of me!
See?
There's only one thing to do. Someone needs to go down and give him a timeout. I'll go.
Killjoy.
Oh, Double D! You're so brave, I'll never forget you.
Mwah.
Boner noise in that.
That was a boner
like
noise.
creaky wood, right?
It just hit me.
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
definitely Double D getting a boner from that kid.
It's so low in the mix, but I heard it.
I heard it. That man. We're just the prudes catching everything for the censors.
It's never going to be on streaming now after this podcast.
But yeah, I mean, without Kevin there, Double D actually is able to take on the hero role, and he gets the "oh, you're so brave" kiss from the girl in the movie there. But that actually doesn't lead to anything, because before he can sacrifice himself, Ed just pulls down the entire clubhouse and
He
smashes
bashes
him
his
down.
head against the tree.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
And you think he's had too much head bashing, but then he goes back for more, and then the treehouse collapses.
A lot of brain damage has happened in Ed's life there. There's also just a great like horror trope of once they crash, they go like, "Rolf, are you all right?" "I think so," and then he's eaten. Just great.
I love is that when the mouth is closing around him?
Yeah,
That's cool. Yeah, I love that.
And he tells him to say goodbye to his livestock. And then Naz, meanwhile, because she's the cool, fashionable girl, she's only worried about her hair getting messed up. And so they're all taken away to Ed's bedroom, where then comes the really gross part of Ed chews up the Chunky Puff cereal, spits it on people, and sticks them on walls.
At first, I thought it was vomit, and I was like, well, this is 90s as hell, but it's a step above vomit. It's just like, it's not quite, the food has not been digested.
If you don't see him, if you cut out that scene of eating Chunky Puffs, it does just look like vomit. It's indistinguishable from it. And I mean, it is spit up food, which even Naz goes like, that is disgusting. Also that Double D even just says Ed seems to be acting out a science fiction movie he may have seen, because it's just
they're really copping to it here.
Yeah. And this time, finally, Eddy has realized how to make money off of this, as they offer to save the people.
Ed stuck them to the wall with chewed up Chunky Puffs. Man, he's good.
I fail to see the humor in this, Eddy. He's coming. He gets you.
What an idiot.
Eddy. Get us down. Yes, okay. I'm sorry. We'll get you down now.
What?
Come on, Eddy. Enough is enough. Look at them.
Fine. We'll get them down. For 50 cents a pop.
Why, Eddy.
What? No skin off my bones. Who's first?
I think it sounds like in the dialogue, they're just making justifications for why they can do this gross out gag where Ed is like, he's imitating a movie he saw. And then Eddy's like, oh, that's actually just chewed up food. It's not puke.
You're right. I bet that was their cover to the censors. Like, hey, they get these lines in here to make it clear.
This is a parody and it's only chewed up food. I know we can't do puke anymore.
I think that parody line is even said off screen. Like, there's not even lip sync to it. So that could have come in really late.
Could be.
But I love too that Eddy's like, yeah, for 50 cents a pop. And then also like, no skin off my bones. Then the next line he says like, he wants the skin off my bones, Double D.
The jar for the change filling with drool is a nice like signifier that it's behind him.
Oh, that's a great like horror movie reveal. They'd held back on the monster that long. That could have been the full reveal kind of shot there. But they then think they're dead. Double D stands up to Ed, and everybody thinks they get a lot of respect for him briefly. And then just Sarah comes in and rips off that like, hey, Mom said you couldn't have parties if I'm not invited, which again, a very sister thing to say.
Definitely. Down with sisters.
Well observed about sisters. And that's once the helmet's off, Ed is like, oh, hello. Like, he just drops everything. And then Sarah reacts to seeing Jimmy stuck to the wall. I feel like there's a real joke they got away with, because she's trying to grab him off and then her face gets stuck on his butt. He's like, is that you, Sarah? And again, really good.
I had some questions about that.
What does exactly that mean? But then the boys run away because, as usual, it's revealed that this was all their fault. Like everything is on the show. Then comes a super dirty ending that I totally forgot about.
There's a lot going on here that shocked me, frankly.
But yes, they're all hiding under Eddy's bed.
Eddy, Hiding underneath your bed isn't gonna save us from harm's way once the children eventually flake off Ed's wall.
Relax, will ya? I always keep a couple of months' worth of supplies for when the heat gets turned up. They'll forget about us in no time. Did you see a can opener?
I am can opener man!
What the?
Please, Ed, calm down.
No, wait!
Give me the stupid can opener, Ed!
I am tissue head!
We've lost him, Eddy.
I will blow your nose! No, wait! I am bed buddy! Sleep on me!
The episode ends with a joke about serial killer Ted Bundy.
Yes, that's right.
That was my biggest question. And of course, things that were drawn under the bed as well.
Yeah, so there's multiple episodes where Eddy has dirty magazines that he got from his brother that are clearly porno. So they got to draw of ostensibly a child in a cartoon who loves his porno and constantly flips through it. And there's another episode where Eddy's mom is cleaning out his room, and so he has a box full of magazines and he tells Ed to hide it. He's like, "Where hide my magazines?"
And of course the crumpled up tissues under the bed.
I couldn't believe that.
Yeah.
Not just that there was, I would have already been like, oh, if there's a fresh box of tissues there, I'd be like, I know what that's for. But that they got to have used tissues under the bed. And I know they could have the cover of he blows his nose. That's it.
It did remind me though of being maybe 11 or 12 and having a friend that was going through puberty a lot earlier than I was, and him just being very horny all the time and talking about, doing things with himself. And I was not quite there yet. And I was just like, this is creeping me out, bro.
I think I've told about before, but I had a friend when I was that age who his father had a big porno collection that he would steal from, and his father seemingly wouldn't notice. And so he was the friend with the hidden porno under the bed guy.
Yeah, I think everybody from our generation, the first porn they saw was 20 years out of date. It's women look like this.
Well, that's
okay.
why, that's why my friend was impressive, because he had up-to-date pornography.
Wow.
He had last year's Playboy he was showing people. And it's whoa, how do you like that? But yeah, Eddy is just like that. The boy who is sexualized sooner than the other boys are. But God, the used Kleenex, they got to have that on there.
How did they miss that? I mean, it can only be one thing. It's oh no, Eddy was sick one day, and he's a dirty boy. Just put those tissues underneath the bed after he blew his nose.
It was a more innocent time, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, no, wait, it was after 9/11. It wasn't innocent.
We were ready to see those kind of jokes after the towers fell.
But yeah, so. Those are both episodes at Ed and Eddy. It was fun to watch that. I don't think I'd watched a full episode at Ed and Eddy in probably 15 years.
Same here, yeah.
Yeah, and to see how much dirtier it was than I remembered, I can really appreciate the cheekiness of what they got away with showing on TV. Though, yes, sometimes I feel like a parent because I don't think a 9-year-old should actually see this.
What if a kid saw this? Yeah, it feels like the last known inhabitant of the 90s is living on into 2008 in this show, and I do respect it for that, because it does feel like this cartoon is such a 90s show, and it has an aesthetic that I do miss, and I'm surprised it was able to last so long into the 2000s. I want to ask people who are in their late 20s or early 30s, did you like this? What did you like about it? Because it feels like it's from a different time.
Was there a ton of merch for this? Did you have a stuffed Ed around? Yeah, I kind of wish some of this was still more seen in current cartoons. I wish there's just so much staticness to a lot of cartoons these days, especially now I'm sounding like Antonucci complaining about digital things, but shows like BoJack Horseman, they sometimes struggle with, they look like puppets moving around. This feels always alive and in motion in a very different way that I do miss.
I'm sure it costs a lot of money that's not there anymore because everything is so fragmented.
Yep, very much so.
Even though this was in a world with cable with 100 channels,
This, in 2008, this was probably one of the most expensive shows on Cartoon Network, I would bet. Yeah. And so that, again, was a pick from Isaac Fox, and a big thank you to you for choosing it and for being a premium supporter on our Patreon. Thank you very much, Isaac.
So thanks so much for listening to What a Cartoon. And if you want to support our show and get all these episodes 1 week ahead of time and ad-free, please go to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. And if you go there and sign up at the Talking Simpsons Network for $5 a month, you'll get just that, but also access to everything behind that $5 paywall. That includes everything we've done on the Patreon for the past 3+ years behind that paywall. That was over 100 bonus podcasts, which includes all of our limited miniseries. The one we did in the summer was Talking Mission Hill. The one that's happening right now, and you're missing it, is Talking Futurama Season 2 Part 2. we're wrapping up Talking Futurama Season 2 only on Patreon from now till the end of 2020. So you want to check that out at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons, along with all of the other bonus podcasts. Again, over 100 bonus podcasts waiting for you there, only behind the $5 paywall. But if you sign up for $10 a month, you'll get all the $5 stuff plus one mega long podcast once a month, only for patrons of that level or higher. And Henry, what is that?
Why, you're talking about the What a Cartoon Movie. Every month we do an exploration of an animated feature film in the same way we do What a Cartoon, but often for over 4 hours long. If you sign up now, you can listen to October's and all of the previous ones that have included films like Space Jam and Aladdin's Return of Jafar. And I don't know what our November one's going to be when you're listening to this, but I bet it's going to be pretty great. Over 100 hours of exclusive podcast extra if you sign up at $10 a month or up your $5 pledge to $10. So please check that out one more time at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
So I've been one of your hosts, Bob Mackey. You can find me on Twitter as Bob Servo, and my other podcast is Retronauts. That is a classic gaming podcast all about old video games. Find that wherever you find podcasts, or go to patreon.com/Retronauts and sign up there for 2 exclusive episodes every month, and that is patreon.com/Retronauts. Henry, how about you?
You can follow me, Henry Gilbert, on Twitter at HENEREYG. Anytime I have cool stuff going on, I'm sure to tweet about it. At the time you're listening to this, I bet I have lots to say. Oh boy. But if you want to follow another fun Twitter account, follow the official one of the Talking Simpsons Network at Talk Simpsons Pod. Anytime new episodes of What a Cartoon or Talking Simpsons go out, or any of our podcasts on the Patreon, you will stay in the loop if you follow at Talk Simpsons Pod on Twitter.
Thank you so much for listening, folks. We'll see you next time for the Courage the Cowardly Dog episodes Everyone Wants to Direct and Remembrance of Courage Past, and we'll see you then.
Can't do that, Eddy! Baby sister of mine has trusted me with her allowance. So much I must play it with!
Apart from Ed's deplorable sentence structure, I'm proud of his devotion to his younger sister. Aren't you, Eddy? Eddy, please, have some decency.
Don't touch me!